A man stands beaten, unrecognizable, skin torn, blood pouring, a crown of thorns pressed into his skull, not placed, forced, a cross dragged through the streets, mocked, spit on, laughed at, nails driven through hands and feet, lifted up between criminals. Darkness falls in the middle of the day. The earth trembles. Something in the unseen realm shifts. And then silence. A tomb is sealed, a stone is rolled, guards are posted, Rome says it's finished. 3 days later, the stone is moved, the body is gone. History splits in two. Now cut to today, plastic eggs, chocolate rabbits, bright baskets, smiling photos. Somewhere between the resurrection of Jesus Christ and a bunny hiding candy, the message didn't just fade, it was diluted, redirected, and slowly replaced. So the real question isn't what is Easter? The real question is, how did the most dangerous truth ever spoken become the safest holiday on the calendar? The official story. The modern explanation is neat and polished. Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus. The eggs represent new life. The bunny is a fun symbol for kids. It's all just tradition. That's what we're told. And on the surface, it works. It allows people to celebrate something meaningful without feeling uncomfortable. But the resurrection was never meant to be comfortable. It's not just a moment of hope. It's a direct challenge to everything people think they understand about life, death, and power. Because if the resurrection is true, then death isn't the end. Then authority isn't absolute. Then truth can't be buried, even by force. That's not a light message. That's explosive. So the question becomes, why does the modern version feel so harmless? The strange details. Now, this is where things start to get uncomfortable. Once you stop accepting things just because they've always been there, you begin to notice details that don't line up. Let's start simple. The resurrection account, whether you read it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, has very specific elements. A crucifixion, a burial, a sealed tomb, witnesses, an empty grave. That's it. No decorations, no side traditions, no symbolic add-ons, just a raw historical claim. He was dead, and then he wasn't. Now compare that to what most people picture when they hear the word Easter. Eggs, bunnies, baskets, candy, bright colors, playful imagery, child-centered rituals, two completely different atmospheres. One is intense, heavy, and confrontational. The other is light, soft, and celebratory. And yet we've been taught they belong together. That's where the tension begins. Because if you take just a moment to think about it, really think, you realize something strange. None of the modern symbols point back to the actual event. Not one. Eggs don't represent a crucifixion. Bunnies don't symbolize a resurrection. Candy doesn't connect to sacrifice. So why are they the main visual language of the holiday? That's not a small detail. That's a complete disconnect. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. The symbolism that does exist in the Bible surrounding the resurrection is very specific. Bread, wine, blood, a cross, an empty tomb. Every symbol carries weight. Every image points directly back to the event. But those aren't the symbols most people see during Easter. Instead, we get symbols tied to something else entirely. Life cycles, nature, fertility, seasonal renewal. Eggs, something new emerging from within. Rabbits, creatures known for rapid multiplication. These are not symbols of redemption, they are symbols of reproduction. So now the question sharpens. Why are symbols of fertility sitting at the center of a day meant to remember death and resurrection? That's not just tradition, that's a substitution of meaning. And here's another detail most people overlook. The tone has changed. The resurrection account is not playful. It's not lighthearted. It's not designed to entertain. When the tomb is found empty, the reaction isn't excitement, it's confusion, fear, awe. People don't run around celebrating immediately. They hesitate, they question, they wrestle with what they're seeing, because something impossible has just happened. But modern Easter skips that entirely. It jumps straight to celebration without ever sitting in the weight of what occurred. And that matters, because when you remove the weight, you change the meaning. Now here's the deeper layer. This didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where someone said, let's replace the resurrection with eggs and rabbits. It was gradual, subtle, layered, a tradition added here, a symbol introduced there, a cultural influence woven in over time, until eventually The original message was still there, but no longer central. And that's what makes it so effective, because nothing was outright removed. It was just surrounded, covered, distracted. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Because now every egg, every bunny, every basket raises the same question. Is this pointing me back to the resurrection or pulling my attention away from it? The historical context. To understand how this shift happened, you have to step out of the moment and look at the long game of history. Because ideas don't just change overnight. They blend, they adapt. And when belief systems spread, they rarely do it in a clean, controlled way. They collide with what's already there. When the message of Jesus Christ began moving beyond its original setting, it entered a world that was anything but empty. The Roman world was saturated with ritual. Seasonal festivals were deeply embedded into everyday life. Spring in particular wasn't just another time of year, it was a turning point. Winter meant death, scarcity, silence. Spring meant life returning. Fields waking up, animals reproducing, the world coming back from the edge, and cultures celebrated that. They marked it with symbols, gatherings, and rituals tied to renewal. So when the message of the resurrection entered that environment, it didn't arrive as the only story about new life. It arrived as one message among many, in a world already speaking that language. Now, think about the challenge that creates. You're introducing a message that is not just spiritual, but disruptive. A man executed publicly, rising from the dead, claiming authority over life itself. That's not just a belief. That's a confrontation with existing systems, political systems, religious systems, cultural systems. So how do you get that message to spread in a world already full of competing ideas? History shows two common paths. You can replace everything, or you can merge. And merging is almost always the path of least resistance, because people don't easily abandon what they've always known. They reinterpret it, they reshape it, they attach new meaning to old forms. So instead of removing spring festivals entirely, they become associated with the resurrection season. Instead of eliminating familiar symbols, they get carried forward, but with adjusted explanations. And over time, the lines begin to blur. Where does the original message end and the added tradition begin? Most people don't even ask that question, because by the time you're born into it, it already feels normal. And here's where the shift becomes subtle, but powerful. At first, the resurrection is the center. Everything else is secondary. But as generations pass, the secondary elements grow. They become more visible, more engaging, more culturally reinforced, until eventually, the supporting elements start to overshadow the center. So now we're left with a reality most people never stop to examine. What we call Easter today is not just a remembrance of the resurrection. It's a layered tradition, part history, part culture, part adaptation. And the deeper question is no longer just what happened. It's which part of it are we actually holding on to? Most people who celebrate Easter still acknowledge the resurrection, at least in passing, but it's no longer the center. It's one part of many, and often not the main part. Kids grow up associating Easter with candy first. Adults continue the tradition without questioning it, and the deeper meaning slowly fades into the background, not because people reject it, but because they never fully confront it. And that matters, because the resurrection is not just a story you hear, it's a claim that demands a response. It changes everything. It changes how you see life. It changes how you see death. It changes how you see truth itself. And that's not something you can keep at a surface level. The bigger picture. The resurrection is a declaration. It declares that death was defeated, that power structures were challenged, that truth cannot be sealed behind stone or controlled by authority. That's not seasonal, that's eternal. And eternal truth doesn't fit neatly into cultural traditions. So culture adapts, it decorates, it softens, it reframes, not always out of malice, sometimes just out of habit. But the effect is the same. The center becomes blurred, and when the center blurs, the meaning weakens. So this Easter, step back for a moment, look past the baskets, past the eggs, past the traditions, and ask yourself, what are you actually celebrating? The symbols, or the moment the tomb was opened and death lost its grip? Because those are not the same thing, and choosing between them might matter more than most people realize.